Night Flight. I'm Judith Wova. And yes, he's back. Back, Michael. Welcome back.
Hello, thank you. Nice to see you again.
Doug, yeah, the New Age. The New Age and the Tavistock Institute.
Yeah.
That would be our topic for today.
Okay.
So where would you like to start?
Well, the launching point for the New Age movement is intimately tied to an organization called the Esalen Institute, which was founded in the 60s in Big Sur, California. This particular organization, which is tied in to Tavistock and the other organizations we'll get into, they're all kind of intimately joined together. But this organization launched what was called the Human Potential Movement. Some of its key speakers back in those days, you had Aldous Huxley, you had Timothy Leary, who was CIA all the way, in my opinion, promoting this whole exploration of consciousness through the use of mind-bending psychedelic drugs, LSD in particular. And this institution launched the entire hippie movement with massive funding from the CIA. But the Human Potential Movement, which was basically launched by this Esalen Institute, was the foundation for modern New Age. It took the teachings of what's called Theosophy, which was founded by Madame Helena Blavatsky, and the idea was and is to create a one-world religion based on Freemasonic ideals and principles. And I think they've been very successful. This institute, Esalen, was also attached to another organization called the American Society for Psychical Research, which was set up this is back in late 1800s, around 1882, about 2 years before the official founding of the Fabian Society in Britain. This institution was set up to explore mediumistic phenomenon like telekinesis and altered states of consciousness, things like this, hypnotism. And these organizations are kind of joined at the hip with the British Fabian Society. The Fabian Society's goal was to infiltrate political, religious, and educational establishments with Marxism. And man, they have been very, very successful. Both the ASPR, American Society for Psychical Research, and the Fabians received enormous funding from the Rockefeller Foundation, as well as Tavistock Institute did. So it's the same money, basically, that's thrown from the same organizations, thrown at these groups to promote this globalist one world agenda. Now, as we said in our last talk, Judith, the idea is to create a global government, but you can't have that without the spiritual side of it. So this New Age movement, Human Potential Movement, basically co-opted a lot of these ideas of theosophy and also psychology too. That's where Tavistock comes in. Tavistock took the works of people like Freud and Jung and basically William James, who one of the founders of the ASPR, and weaponized it. So psychology is a weapon. Edward Bernays, who was the nephew of Freud, was heavily involved in the Fabian Society, and he was dubbed the father of propaganda. And of course, the term propaganda was changed to public relations because it just sounds so much nicer. And one of the things that Bernays can be remembered for achieving, back in the early parts of the 20th century in America, a woman smoking cigarettes was considered very, very dirty and taboo. And this guy started a propaganda campaign to make it glamorous. And he was very, very successful. So, of course, on behalf of the tobacco industries, they had, a big market they could tap. And he was very successful in this propaganda endeavor to make smoking look glamorous and sexy. So just as an example, that's what this guy was all about. And he used Freudian psychology to do this, to achieve this. And what we see today is these kind of ideas and principles being enacted on a massive scale, crowd psychology. And it goes very deep. Tavistock, which was active at the end of World War I as a psychological warfare unit, as we said off camera, to study what was called shell shock. Nowadays, they call it post-traumatic stress disorder, same thing. And like you said, they found that a traumatized mind is easily manipulable and highly suggestible. And they applied this to group dynamics, crowd psychology. And my goodness, have they been successful with it. And from that and from the early adoption of psychiatry and theosophical principles was born this entire New Age movement. And if we examine some of the tenets of this New Age movement, my goodness, it's misdirection. It's fake spirituality. It's all feel goody good stuff cloaked in mysticism, which has never been the solution for anything. I mean, it's been pushed for how many years now? This mystical mumbo jumbo as a solution. It's not. It's really just escapism. As we see, with the hippie movement, that wasn't about expanding consciousness. It was about getting drugged out and escaping reality.
Yeah, I would say so. And okay, so we have Esalen Institute.
Yes.
We have Tavistock Institute. And we have the theosophical side.
And also Frankfurt School as well.
Frankfurt School, correct. Where does Lucis Trust tie in?
Oh, Lucis Trust is Lucis Trust is a big one. Did you know that under Lucis Trust, there's roughly 37,000 so-called charitable organizations under their umbrella that, of course, a charitable organization isn't taxed. The United Nations is considered a charitable organization. The entire UN was a brainchild of a woman called Alice Bailey, knee-deep in theosophy, total theosophical proponent of this New Age religion. And the Lucis Publishing Company was the publishing house for UN propaganda, we'll call it, material. So the Lucis Trust is very, very big in this. It's an organization that has under its umbrella thousands and thousands of charitable organizations that penetrate the globe in order to institute this one world government and one world religion. It used to be called Lucifer Publishing, but they had to change the name because that was just a bit too obvious,
I was just going to say the name itself, Lucis Trust, is a dead giveaway.
Yeah.
What's really going on there? And all these other, let's say institutions that are connected to Lucis Trust, is it easy to track them down?
You could go to their website and see a list of a lot of the organizations that are under their umbrella. I mean, they don't hide it. But I'm sure there are hidden ones that are up to nefarious things. Because I think that many organizations kind of hide behind the cloak of benevolence. We're charitable organizations, so we do philanthropic work. And then at the inner court of these organizations, like Freemasonry, for instance, they're less than philanthropic, let's say, and I think there's a lot of organizations like this that they have the disguise of being a charitable or philanthropic organization, but the inner court is used for something entirely different, which is to promote this whole one world religion, one world government agenda that we see. Really, it's coming into its final implementation in this age. And what we've got is entire cultures distracted by the modern day bread and circuses or following these mystical, cul-de-sacs and not really bringing any practicality into the equation to seriously advance where we need to be if we're going to, create something that's sustainable, that works for everyone. And I certainly don't see it happening. But it's decision time for the human species. I've felt that for a long time.
Yeah. Lucis Trust is also very big on ascended masters.
Of course they are, because it's all connected to theosophy, which, Blavatsky was in contact with these ascended masters, which, I've always been very suspect of channeling. But I don't doubt that there are certain people that have psychic abilities, perhaps they can. But how do you know if you're in contact with some external being that they're not, excuse my language, fucking with you?
Yeah.
So, and, And again, anything external, in my humble opinion, should be really questioned and maybe put aside for more internal guidance. And I think any of these teachers or gurus or masters, whatever, that don't tell you that it should be focused within are misleading you. Maybe not deliberately, a lot of them, but anytime that it comes to externalization, you're on the wrong path, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyway, I mean, who really named them ascended masters? Is that like a self-proclaimed thing, or where does this come from? Who decides?
Yeah, well, good question. Every time I hear the word master, I cringe, you know. The only person that I would ever call master is, say, a martial arts teacher who's been studying his whole life and I'm studying under him, maybe then. But this whole master thing, you know what, be your own master. That's what any teacher should tell you, that you be your own master, because we have this inherent guidance system. If we just listen to it, you know, turn down the racket of our ego a little bit and listen to the still small voice that's always there, which is an internal thing. You're not going to find it externally. Ascended master. Yeah, master, get your ass down here for 5 minutes, man. You'll be quivering on the floor in this world. You know what I mean? It's all just to mislead. And the New Age is full of flakes and charlatans of all kinds, as I say. And, you know, I was lucky to be spared from a lot of it, because I began my journey in about 1999 into, you know, searching for truth, or whatever you want to call it. And I got exposure to the New Age right away, because I had attended what they call it a whole life expo in New York City, in the Hotel New Yorker, where Tesla died, as coincidentally. But anyway, and it was kind of cool. They had all kinds of expos and vendors and things like this. And there was some cool stuff there. But what I noticed is that it was a collection of flakes and just really like kind of woo-woo, pseudo-mystical kind of people. And I was taken aback by that. They had people promoting at the time this guy called Maitreya, the new Messiah. And I was just, my bullshit detector was on high. And I did meet some nice people, and I went to a lecture, and it was okay. But for the most part, I was turned off to it immediately, because I just saw a bunch of really flaky people. And I did get into studying some aspects of the New Age, but I just never fell down that road too much, which I was fortunate enough not to, because the New Age teachings, there's so many teachings that are just not practical, and I think just meant to mislead people down a dead-end road.
Yeah, especially that they took out the action. You know, this whole concept, for instance, do not judge.
Ridiculous. That's the ridiculous statement. We have to make judgments all the time. Now, what I would say is value judgments based on superficial nonsense. Like if you see a person with tattoos, oh, look at this asshole covered in, that's silly judgment. But we have to make valuable judgments all the time. And I use this example. Let's say, because in America, if someone is a sex offender, they have to register in a national database because it's public knowledge. So let's say a registered child sex offender moves into the house next door. I have to make a judgment about whether I'm going to let my kids anywhere near that sicko, right? So that's a valuable judgment. We have to do that all the time. It's superficial judgments that are ridiculous, like judging a person, how they dress or how they look. That's nonsense. But you can't just say, don't judge. We judge all the time. We have to. Our survival depends on it. If I'm walking down a dark alley and there's shady looking people, you know, I have to make a judgment whether I want to take my chances walking down that way, or, you know, just as a stupid example, but you get my point. Do not judge.
Yeah. Another thing that is really not sitting well with me is this, don't look at the negative.
Oh, that's a big one in the New Age. Yeah. Well, they say, well, if you examine the negative, then you're just giving it power. That's nonsense too. What that is it's escapism and docility, because by us avoiding the negative things that are occurring, that's what's giving power to it. Certainly we should shine a light on it and contemplate solutions for how to fix it. And here's an example that I know people that are familiar with me have heard me say this before, so bear with me. Let's just say I have a cancerous tumor. That's a negative thing because it could kill me. Now, if I ignore that negative thing, how is that helping? No, I have to deal with it and take action to, get rid of it in one way or another. Just, I know that might not be a great example, but just to say avoid the negative is nonsense. And if we look at this world, it's falling into the shitter. We should acknowledge it. Now, where I draw the line is, as we talked about last time, dwelling in the negative. And I've seen a lot of people that walk down this road of research do that, to where they just let themselves be engulfed by it. Well, surely there's still a lot of beauty in this world. And I think, to me, it's always been about balance, to kind of look at both sides and try to strike a balance between them, maybe somewhere beyond duality, I don't know. But we live in a world of polarity and duality. If we ignore one side of that, we're not whole. We're imbalanced because we're failing to see the dark side of life. And to ignore the dark side of life, you're going to stay stuck. And, a lot of these New Age proponents advocate just getting blissed out. Follow your bliss. Where is that? How does that lead to any kind of practical conscious advancement or to any practical solution? And it doesn't. It's just escapism. Excuse me.
Another one where I always cringe is, oh, it's just an experience. Nothing wrong with it. There is no good or bad.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, moral relativism. Mm-hmm. Well, jumping in front of a bus is an experience too. Smashing yourself in the face with a hammer, that's an experience too. Yeah, see, that falls into the whole don't judge thing, which is nonsense. Mm-hmm. And that's an ignoring of the evil in the world too. There's no good or bad. It's all just experience. I really. So what about satanic child abuse? Yeah. That's not evil or wrong? Or
tell that to the child. It's just an experience.
Yeah. Oh, like the kid would have consciously chose that? No, I don't buy that. And I know there's a lot of proponents of that too. I've come across them over the years. And to me, what that is just moral relativism. I think inherently people of conscience, good people, have kind of an inner, let's call it a moral compass, just for lack of a better term. So we know that rape is wrong, that murder is wrong, that to steal from someone or to hurt some innocent person is just wrong. Mm-hmm. At least I think people of conscience should think that, you know what I mean? I'm a big believer in you treat others how you want to be treated, right? And you don't do to others what you don't want to be done to you. To me, this is just logical. So this whole, it's just an experience. Notice how you never, okay, if it's just an experience, if your wife gets raped, are you going to do something about it? Or are you just going to stand back and say, well, honey, it's just an experience? What the fuck nonsense is this? Or what about in Palestine, all those bombings and, it's just an experience. What? Yeah, it's easy to say that until you're on the receiving end of somebody committing an evil act against you. I wonder if that would change your mind. That is the most ridiculous piece of ideological bullshit I've ever heard in my life. No good or evil. Look around at this world. It's engulfed in evil. It's this massive imbalance, and the sickest amongst us happen to lead us. And you go and vote for them. Man, I don't know. But I guess it's just an experience, huh? That's just nonsense. And this is where...
Side note, the Israeli defense minister has resigned because of the ceasefire. He says that Netanyahu is bowing down to Hamas.
Oh, God. I wasn't aware of that. Wow. Mm-hmm. But it's all just experience, so we don't have to... Yeah, that's nonsense. That's where the mass psychology comes into it. There's been this doctrine of docility and passivity that's penetrated European and especially American culture. And what we see are men becoming demasculinized and women are becoming masculinized. Like the roles are reversing. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I think males and females are equal, but different, right? A man can't have a baby. That's the woman's job. You know what I mean? So there are roles, and what they're doing, especially in America, is twisting those around with the whole transgender agenda and this demasculinization of the men in this culture. You see it on television. The men are always portrayed as spineless, wimpy bimbos, right? And the women as emasculated. And it's sowing the seeds of confusion. And that's part of this whole Tavistock crowd psychology shit too. Television's been their greatest weapon. And I wanted to mention Frankfurt School too, which was founded in Germany by Marxist socialists, which was shut down, but they found a safe haven in Columbia University. Now, do you know that not Frankfurt, so I got thrown off. Frankfurt School is tied into Tavistock as well, and which again attached to this Fabian Society, whose goal is to penetrate cultures with Marxism. Another organization.
The long march through the institutions.
What was that again?
The long march through the institutions. I think that is Frankfurt School. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then
so
you have
slowly but gradually you get your people in
oh yeah,
the decision-making positions.
Yes, absolutely. Media education and government. And they've been successful at it, wildly successful. And then there's another institution called Stanford Research Institute, which is now also tied into Tavistock. That's basically Tavistock's subsidiary in America, Stanford Research Institute, and which was founded, I forget off the top of my head, connected to the military. Do you know that they were doing heavy studies into artificial intelligence as early as 1966, right around the time of the hippie movement, right around the time of this penetration into the culture with the New Age philosophy. So all these organizations are tied together and they all have the same goal. I didn't mean to get off track, but I definitely wanted to mention Stanford because that's Tavistock's partner here in America.
Do you think that the hippie movement killed the peace movement?
Yeah, I think it was set up as a mask for, anti-war, but it became, like we said earlier, just an escapist kind of philosophy, right? One of the proponents was this guy, Timothy Leary, total agent. And what was his philosophy? Turn on, tune in, and drop out. That was this whole philosophy back then. Just, get yourself all drugged up and, and disconnect from what's going on all around you. Even though there were the Vietnam War protesters still, I mean, most of the hippie movement was just completely dazed and, in this whole escapist mentality.
And they brought in the music to go along with that.
Yes, a lot of the 60s rock bands came from a place called Laurel Canyon, in California. You had the Mamas and the Papas, the Doors, even Frank Zappa, and a lot of others. And Laurel Canyon had its own studio, movie studios and things. So this was also part of the psychological manipulation. Did you know? I just found this out, and it blew my mind. Jim Morrison's father was a military man.
I know.
He was
Gulf of Tonkin.
Yes, I did not know this until recently. So he was a rear admiral on the ship that was involved in the Gulf of Tonkin incident. Now, the Gulf of Tonkin incident, for your viewers that may not be aware, was what brought America into the Vietnam War.
A false flag.
Yeah. They were shooting at ships that weren't there. And apparently Morrison's father was on that ship. And so it was this big lie. Oh, the torpedo boats are firing on American vessels. There were no ships there. So the whole entire Vietnam War, which just destroyed lots of people. Agent Orange, that's where it was unleashed, which is just still causing problems, was based on a lie. And apparently Morrison's father was involved in that. And I didn't know this. And a lot of these early rock and roll bands from the 60s came from families that had military connections. So this was, you know, I like a lot of that music too, don't get me wrong. But the Beatles was definitely a creation of Tavistock. And the idea was to create a subculture based on drugs and detachment and loud music. And, you know, it was successful. Do you know the original Woodstock Festival right here in upstate New York was attended to by over 200,000 people and another 200,000 crowding around to try to get in. Cars were parked 8 miles away. And this was a massive social experiment, full complicity, backing by the CIA. The LSD was in abundance and the authorities knew it. And, you know, this was to keep the kids drugged out and pounded with rock music for 3 days, constant.
In the mud.
Yeah, up to their knees in the mud from torrential downpours. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this is what came from that whole Esalen / Tavistock / SPR kind of movement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that way you're busy with yourself, drugged up, blissed out.
Yeah. And that's, you know, the New Age promotes that whole mentality. Blissed out, ignore the negative, don't judge. It's all just experience. That will stagnate your growth. That will never give to you anything except escapism. And that whole movement, and then what happened to a lot of these hippies, right? That were down with the man and peace and love. They wound up becoming yuppies, working for multi-million-dollar corporations, becoming the very thing that they protested against.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you think that they killed the hippie movement with the Manson family?
I don't think so. I think it's still kind of alive and well in many places.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you go to places like Sedona or Las Vegas, there's still that mentality is pretty prevalent.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know much about the Manson thing because I didn't look into it all that much, but there's something fishy going on there too, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
But I think at least, I'm not debating that there are still remnants of that. But,
oh, yeah. Yeah, it morphed into the New Age. Yeah.
Yeah. But it lost steam somewhere.
Yes.
Around that.
I think so too. But nowadays, I guess it outlived its usefulness because, like we said in our last talk, the distractions are so numerous with all the technology that people are completely oblivious to what's occurring all around them. No clue of history and no even awareness of current events that are unfolding all around us. And we've got social networking and we've got tablets and iPhones and video games and all this shit. They don't need the hippie movement anymore. People are just completely plugged into this, you know, digital world now.
Mm-hmm. And anyway, all these tenets, don't judge, it's just an experience, blah, 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 blah. It perfectly serves the hidden controllers. All of it.
Of course it does. Yeah. Because people who are docile will not stand up against tyranny.
Mm-hmm.
No, we won't look at the genocide in Palestine because that's negative. Or we won't, you know, look at Monsanto poisoning the crops because, you know, I don't want to look at the negative. Or we won't look at any number of things. Fukushima, no, I don't want to look at that because, you know, it doesn't affect me. And that's the mentality of a coward, in my opinion. But again, like I say, balance it out. If you dwell too much in the dark, it'll consume you. So you balance it out because it's still a beautiful world in many ways. We're letting it be destroyed, but there still is a lot of beauty out there, and I really do believe that we should look at both sides of life and, you know, integrate that into our being, so to speak.
And I think a lot of what is sold there as spirituality is spiritual bypassing.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned that. I just read a really good book by that title. I could get it for you. I forget who wrote it, but it was written from a psychologist's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
He made a lot of great points in there about how people will use spirituality as a means to avoid confronting what really needs to be confronted. For instance, the dark side of our personalities or certain issues that we may need to deal with. And what I've seen happen is people, maybe they practice yoga or veganism or any number of things, which is nothing wrong with that. But they get on their kind of spiritual high horse and look down on others that don't follow the same path. And there's another tool of division right there. And I think that's a lot of bypassing too. Maybe I'll get wrapped up, say, in whatever, yoga, and that becomes my world. And I will look negatively upon people, but each path is unique and different. So, you know, and I'm not picking on anyone that's into those things at all. I think they're both beneficial. But I've seen that a lot too. And to me, that's bypassing. So I'll get wrapped up in this one practice and avoid looking at other things that can, you know, create a more holistic level of consciousness, if you like.
Mm-hmm. Another thing, it could be even harmful to yourself. Let's say you are in a completely defunct relationship. Maybe even abuse is going on. And instead of telling yourself, yeah, well, once I have cleared everything in myself, then he will mirror that back to me, or she, doesn't matter who is doing it. No, that is not going to happen. Sometimes you just have to admit to yourself that you are in a defunct relationship.
Sure, yeah. You know, and I
not,
stayed in one for years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like we were talking about, I'm not afraid to talk about it now, but I did. I didn't have that belief that, oh, she's going to mirror. It's just that I was on that kind of journey of self-actualization and she wasn't. So people grow apart. But yeah, I've seen, how many times have you seen, say, a woman who's in an abusive relationship that goes from one to the next over and over again? And I think that has to do with what we talked about last time with this whole victim mentality, because our whole lives we're taught that we're broken, we're no good, we're victims. And if we adopt that as our primary belief, if we dwell in the victim consciousness, I think life's going to kind of mirror that. So that, see, there is some truth in New Age teachings, but they contort it and twist it like everything else. For instance, what's called the law of attraction. Absolutely true, but they twist it and they cheapen it because like energy attracts like energy. So if we're constantly locked in the victim mentality, we're going to experience that in our reality because we can't break out of that cycle. So there is truth to that. But then you get the contortion of it with books like The Secret that sold 19 million copies because they're offering a magical solution. Everybody wants a magical solution where, oh, if I just think about it, then, you know, it will manifest. But no, you got to remember the crucial component to this equation, which is physical action. Because yes, everything does start in the realm of thought, but we have to merge that with the physical. You know, without action, you could think all day and nothing's going to happen. You know what I mean? But they leave that part out. And, you know, someone's getting rich selling this shit.
Yeah. And on top of that, even if you realize, well, I am suffering, and I have been suffering for quite a while, then something comes along, something or someone that tells you, you know what, You made that choice before you came in on a soul level. That's why. Hmm.
Mm.
So yeah, and because of that, I have to keep on suffering. Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, you see, there again, that's very twisted. I mean, who knows if we choose our experience before we're born or not? But we don't have control over other people's actions. But
Mm.
you know, yeah, no, I don't get that one either. Oh, well, you chose this, so yeah, well, no, because again, if you break that cycle of victim mentality, you don't have to suffer. Things happen in life. We get sick. We experience tragic things, like maybe a loved one dies. No control over this, you know. Or oh, the children in Palestine, they just chose to be bombed to shit. Who the fuck would choose something like that? You know, no.
Yeah,
It's
especially when your memory is wiped anyway.
right.
Yeah, you chose that. You just can't remember. Hmm.
Yeah, what would be the point of that? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, the New Age is just so convoluted. And like any religion, which is what it is, there will be sprinklings of truth in there. And the idea is to kind of discern and find what's right and throw away the rest, just like any religion. Because if it didn't have pieces of truth, they wouldn't be able to sell it. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, the whole spiritual thing. But it has to have little pieces of truth, or else it wouldn't be, palatable. No one would buy it. It's the same with anything, If it was just straight lies, then, you could see through it. But what they'll do is they'll take some truth and twist it and contort it and just create this bogus philosophy, and people buy it and they get misled. And it's really sad.
And there are so many players in there where you can put your hope on.
Yes.
Angels and ascended masters.
Yeah. Channelers, and this external deity says this, and yeah, people hang their whole entire hopes on things like that. There's a bunch of these channelers that they're channeling some entity, and the people that flock to them are hanging on their every word to this external. And they may be real, maybe not, I don't know. But like I said, channeling always kind of gave me a red flag. But very rarely have I heard any of them say, oh yeah, so-and-so master says to stop following me and follow yourself and look within and, do your own homework and stop trying to, give me all your money and hang your hopes on this, whatever, deity. They never say that, do they?
Yeah. Yeah, because then the business is over.
Yep. Yeah, it's just such a sham. And
it ties in with what we talked about last time with saviors.
yeah, so of course it does. There's this, I think individualism and a self-actualized, self-created human being is the biggest threat to this whole structure. And it almost seems like this global network is scrambling in this day and age. It's like they're trying to get this agenda in place now. We want the AI and the implants and the singularity. We want this now, right now. Like why are they becoming so impatient? I wonder. And maybe there is some kind of rumbling in the consciousness. Maybe there are certain cycles that are coalescing that can assist us if we take advantage of it. I don't know. It's possible. But one thing I do know is that this consortium network, these global leaders, these rulers are in panic mode. Maybe they know their time is up. Maybe it's endgame. Maybe it's time for us to just depart. I mean, any number of possibilities could be. I don't know. But I do know they are definitely scrambling to get this agenda in place.
And we already have an AI church.
Yes, they do. It's called the Way of the Future. And they've received tax-exempt status, by the way. And they come right out and say that we worship AI as a digital godhead. Now that is enough to give me the chills. And people follow it like they'll follow anything, you know? Yeah.
Wasn't the guy who founded that connected with Google?
Connected with who?
Google.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. Which is the monitoring network of the whole planet. You know, they want to make Google the only source of online information. So control all the information and herd us into this singularity of consciousness, which is dangerous, you know. And again, this goes back, the study and the idea of inception of artificial intelligence right back to 1966 and beyond. But Stanford was doing this work in 1966, making crude robots back then with TV monitors on their chest. You know, they weren't as advanced as they are today, but they were doing it that far back.
And then they took it a step further.
Oh, yeah.
And went into MK Ultra.
Oh, yeah, MK Ultra. This was a CIA operation. What they did, they would literally torture people and kind of compartmentalize their minds. They found that through extreme torture, they could create what they call alters in the mind, basically split personality. So you could program a person to go kill someone and then not remember they did it. The whole Manchurian Candidate thing, that's real. They could program someone to commit a horrendous act and then switch back to their normal consciousness and not even remember they had anything to do with it. And this is CIA, and this is public knowledge too. They've been doing this for a long, long time. Yeah. Yeah, it's a crazy world we live in, isn't it?
My cat is acting up. Of course he has to act up now.
He wants your attention.
No. Everything is okay. Do you think that the Vatican, for instance, has for a number of years done these gatherings with all kinds of religions where they all pray for world peace and so forth?
Yeah, and in fact, this Pope, Frankie, I call him Frankie. Pope Francis, he's a Marxist Jesuit.
Mm-hmm.
He was preaching Marxism from the pulpits in Latin America before he was Pope, of course. He, on a number of occasions, you heard him call for a unity of the world religions, a one world religion. Yeah, to unify, which that's what Theosophy has done. They had an Eastern branch, and their agents like Gandhi, we can get into that another time. He was not the man he was portrayed to be at all. And him, and was it Vivekananda, I believe, who was a Mason, they actually created Hinduism, which was an unfoldment of a lot of the Eastern traditions under one banner, Theosophy. So they had an Eastern tradition too. But then you got this Jesuit Marxist Pope calling for the same thing, a unity of the world religions. Well, how do you mix Sharia law or believers in Sharia with believers in Buddhism? How does that work? How is it going to work? No, it's going to have to be under their banner, which is Theosophy, the New Age, you know. So yeah, the whole thing is just so screwed up. But yeah, Gandhi was not the man he was portrayed to be. And
No,
then
he
you
was
got
not.
another organization founded. When was this founded? Around the time, I think it was the late 1800s, around all the time that these other groups were forming, called the Parliament of World Religions, which they hold their little meetings occasionally, and they have representatives from all different religions calling for the same thing, connected to Theosophy, connected to the Fabians, SPR, and all these other things we talk about. And they go around and they'll have a Hindu guy and a Muslim guy and a Christian. See, we can all get along. But they never talk about transcending religion, the thing that has ensnared human consciousness since the beginning of time. No, none of these leaders ever talk about getting beyond religion. No, they talk about, this hierarchy. And, that's, to me, religion is the thing that human beings need to transcend the most, whether it's Christianity or New Age or Muslim or any of it. Why do we need it anymore? Hasn't it caused more problems than it's ever caused any, freedom in this world?
It didn't serve us at all.
Yeah, maybe a little in some ways, we could see the good in it, but always more damage it's caused than brought its humanity any kind of sovereignty or freedom. Those things have to begin within first. And the one way to be consciously sovereign is to flush religion down the toilet.
Yeah, and don't replace it with another nonsense.
Right, and that's what the New Age really is. It's kind of the last dead end for people that are breaking free from the traditional religions they may have been brought up with. Here's the New Age waiting for them, and a lot of people have fallen into that. Maybe they grew up as a Catholic, as I did, which I always hated it. Then, okay, I want to walk away from this traditional religion. Well, here's the New Age with its glittering gold bars on its cage saying, oh, it's love and light, peace, and all this shit. And a lot of people get trapped into that.
Love and light, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's all rainbows and puppy dogs. I don't know what world you're living in, but it's not. Like I said, there is a lot of beauty and we should acknowledge it, I think. But there's a lot of ugliness too, and we should acknowledge that as well and look at all sides of it so that we can be fully integrated.
But there's also something like a cold false light.
Say that again, please.
A false cold light.
Mm-hmm.
Not everything that seems to be light is necessarily benevolent.
Well, sure, right? I mean, light can be used as a weapon too.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You ever get pulled over by a cop and he comes to your car and a blinding flashlight in your face? Well, there's an example of that. And also these pseudo-loving lighters, oh, the light, they want to bask in the light. Let me tell you something. The light is going to shine on all of the mess and the dirt and the muck so that it could be cleaned up. And when we take that to the psychological perspective, if you want to advance, you really have to look at the negative side. We all have a dark side. And I say embrace it. I mean, not in a sadistic manner, but look at it. We all have it. And people are so afraid of that. So these pseudo-loving lighters, it's escapism. Again, oh, I want to see the light and bask in the light. Yeah, do you? Because the first thing that's going to happen is it's going to show you all the mess. And I'll tell you, by actually facing that aspect of our psyches, it's very healing and very cleansing. I tell you, you will not, your innermost light will not be revealed to you before your innermost darkness is. And we're afraid of that. And the New Age teaches to avoid that. And that's detrimental, because if we embrace that aspect of ourselves, then we could see a larger aspect. That's just my view from my experience and stuff. And another thing, so as you know, I've had experiences with the ayahuasca medicine. That has also become trendy, and New Age people want to go thrill seeking with it. And that is not how you use this medicine. It's something that you have to really prepare for, and you have to really get into the right frame of mind. And it can bring healing mentally and physically, as it did for me. But my God, I've seen these people just go off into it, and they want to take it 50 times, 100 times. And again, escapism, because this stuff is powerful. And, you know, I've known people, personal people that have done that. And I say, what are you looking for? I took it 3, I'm done, and never need to do it again. And I in the beginning, when I started to put information publicly, I spoke about it, and I saw them come out of the woodworks. Oh, Mother Aya, blah, 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 love and light. And I stopped talking about it because I didn't want people to get the wrong impression. This is not something you do as a party favor. No, you're opening up portals in your mind that, you know, you're going to be showing your darkness. You sure you want to jump into that? Just like, oh, love and light, I don't recommend that. you know, you can have a really bad time. But that's another thing I wanted to mention too, because that's been co-opted by this whole New Age too. This is an ancient shamanic medicine that's used medicinally in the ancient cultures. It does have its benefits in medicine and psychology, as we see scientists all around the world studying it. I speak from my own experience. But when you abuse it in order to get blissed out all the time, you're missing the whole point. And that's another trendy thing that this whole New Age has co-opted, this ancient medicine that's been used for thousands of years, and they turn it into a trendy, thrill-seeking thing. Like everything else they get their hands on, they cheapen it.
Let's say we don't want to have our experience with ayahuasca for whatever reason. And so how do we do that? Embrace our darkness?
Well, I don't know that I could tell another how to do it, but I would suggest, see, what we do is we repress things. So we have kind of, excuse me, I'm getting a bit of a cold. We have this area of the mind, call it the subconscious, or call it the garbage dumpster of the mind, and we put everything in there, all the trauma we faced as a kid growing up, or all the things we don't like about ourselves, or the things we're afraid to look at. We kind of bury it. But the problem is that we forget about it, and then we forget that we forgot about it. So, I mean, I think there's a number of ways that we can, because people don't want to open up the garbage and look in there. It's painful. But I think we have to do it to a certain degree. We don't have to relive every traumatic experience we ever had, because, you know, that might not be healthy. But I think we have to deal with some of that shit that we buried in a gentle way. I think that could be done through meditation. I think that could be done through psychotherapy. I think that could be done through just alone time and contemplating, okay, what is it that I'm avoiding? And being honest with oneself. It doesn't take some potion to do that. And that's not what I was looking to do. It just happened. I think there's any number of ways, and I think that it would be different for each individual. I'd say follow your own heart and your own path. But one thing I feel certain about is that we kind of need to start dealing with that repressed shit, because what happens is we subconsciously kind of project it to the world and to our relationships, and we don't realize we're doing it. And I think when you have a planet of people that are doing that, that's why we have the mess we have now. That's why psychopaths run the show, because we're not dealing with our own darkness. And I'll tell you, it can be your greatest teacher. We're afraid because of the trauma it may have caused in the past, but it can actually be very rewarding to deal with that repressed shit.
Where do you see the New Age going?
Hopefully down the toilet where it belongs. But well, like we're at a crossroads as a species. I see it morphing into this whole, digitized worship of AI, because it has the same mentality, collectivism. Well, now they have the technology to where they can really, put this in place and create the one consciousness, you know what I mean? I think we already are, but individuated within that wholeness. But like everything else, they contort the truth. So they want to actually create a digitized hive mind. That's where I see it going. And it's just really scary. And it's something that should be on everyone's mind, because this technology has really come a long way in a short period of time. Did you see, just last week, China had their first artificially intelligent news presenter? I could send you the video.
I've seen that.
That was creepy, because you look at it and it looks human until it starts speaking. Then you could kind of tell it's a robot. But I'm looking at this like, damn, that looks like a human being. Well, this is how far it's got. And that's just the technology that's presented to the public. What do they have behind closed doors in the military sector that we don't know about?
And China revived re-education camps.
Yeah. Yeah. My goodness.
Yeah.
So yeah, Theosophy was the first kind of movement to enfold all these religions under one banner. But, and you know, I think a lot of the migrant crisis is to create this kind of cultural war to bring both camps under this umbrella, if you will. See, you can't get along. Well, we have this waiting over here. Just join us and it'll be all peace. So, you know, order out of chaos. We'll create the chaos and then we'll offer you the solution to fix the mess that we created in the first place. And it'll be based on AI and theosophy and all this crap we see. And I think resistance to it and peaceful noncompliance is a good step in the right direction. You know, divorce your consciousness from agreeing with this shit. And stop being so distracted. There's nothing wrong with watching a football game. There's nothing wrong with, I don't know, whatever people are into, playing video games or something. There's nothing wrong with that. But if that becomes the forefront of your consciousness at the neglect of dealing with your dark side or questioning or paying attention to what's unfolding in the world, then you're lost.
Yeah, and they pick you up on the other side.
Yeah, absolutely.
I lost my thought. I lost my question.
That happens to me all the time.
I'm having senior moments. Mm. If I have to say, I don't really see it right now that especially Muslims would give up their religion. You know, they are
Right.
screaming left, right, and center for beheading of those who insult the prophet.
Yeah, because it's a religion of peace, don't you know?
Yeah.
Well, maybe this could go a couple of ways. Maybe the New World Order, since Islam is so restrictive and militant, maybe they'd want that to usher in the world religion, or maybe just let the herd kill each other, and then we'll come pick up the pieces with this. No, you know, see, it doesn't work. Now we have this to offer, which is peace and love and light and whatever. So it could go a number of ways. But yeah, then they'll be resistant to it, of course, and then wind up killing each other, you know. But that might be a possibility. Usher it in under this kind of archaic militant type of religion, or just let them kill each other to the point where people get so exhausted that they'll be willing to accept anything if it promises peace. That's kind of what it looks like to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Here, it's getting shape. And you know that this global pact for migration will be signed in December.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
To do what? Allow more of it to continue, or?
Yeah, sure. It will be in Marrakesh, I guess 10th or 11th. And there are official numbers, so-called studies that the EU did. Which countries can take in how many people? And in their wonderful wisdom, they came up for Germany with a number of 196 million people.
In addition to what you already have there?
Uh-huh.
Oh, wow. I mean, Germany's already become quite destabilized, if I'm correct, right?
Uh-huh.
So you see the agenda here is just to destabilize European culture, Western culture in general. And they're doing it here too. It's actually been going on for a while here, but it's happening here too. It's part of that Kalergi plan. It's part of this engineered cultural war. And I think we're going to see mass clashes of civilization let it fall into ruin, and then, oh, we'll be there to pick up the pieces and offer in this one world religion, whatever it's going to be, whether it's the digitized AI world or, yeah. My goodness. Like, because not enough damage has been done to Europe already. Just keep, and Pope Frankie, I saw him talk about, all for it. You see the Vatican, it's got big walls and fences. Do they let any migrants in there? No, I don't think they do. It's just the hypocrisy is stunning, isn't it? That's insane. It's going to turn culture upside down.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you're dealing with two cultures that are so incompatible. Western culture and strict Islamic Sharia is so different. How can you integrate the two? You can't. It's going to cause a clash. It already is, but it's going to cause a massive, culture war. Shit, they've disarmed all the Europeans. So, they're trying to do it here because there's one shooting after another. Just another one the other day. One shooting after another. Right away, they call for taking away firearms from people. So we'll disarm you, and then we'll create this clash of civilizations and continue with their agenda while they do it.
But the USA will not sign.
Oh, that's good. But still, they're bringing them in. They've been doing it for a while. The neighborhood where I live is loaded with refugees because it's a poor city, and I guess they get grants from the government to bring in a certain number of them. But an economically depressed area like this really can't assimilate them. And I feel bad for a lot of them. They're from Somalia, war-torn regions. They don't bother anybody. I haven't seen any violence in my area. It's mostly kids, a lot of children. I don't really have a problem with it. If they try to assimilate to our culture, which seems like they do in my area anyway, there's a very multicultural area, and there's peace in my particular area. People just want to live their lives, But how can an economically depressed area assimilate so many? It just drains the social systems, and meanwhile, there's homeless up and down the streets, American people. So it's a little out of whack, but yeah.
But the narrative is that Trump keeps the migrants out.
It was what?
I said the narrative is that Trump keeps the migrants out.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think this has been going on for 30 years, and he spews a lot of hot air, this guy.
Mm.
We'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, all these people jumping on the Trump QAnon bandwagon, I'm extremely skeptical of the whole thing. We'll see what happens. They're in the big club. Remember George Carlin? It's a big club, and you ain't in it. Yeah, well, he's in the billionaires club, and they usually don't arrest their own. And I think a lot of this opposition is scripted to cause division and to create this divide, which I'll tell you, America's never been so divided.
Mm.
It's unbelievable. So, they'll do that from time to time. They'll put a people's champion in front of the people,
Mm-hmm.
Like the Gandhis of the world, and they're not what they appear to be.
Yeah. I see that sometimes on Twitter, that people are fighting tooth and nails over Democrats and Republicans.
Yes. And while you're busy on social networking, fighting over this irrelevant nonsense, it's time you could spend working on yourself, making your community a better place. You know what I ask people too? They pull this political shit with me. I'm like, hey, let me ask you something. What do you personally do that makes the world a less shitty place? Huh? I voted for Trump. Oh, great. Yeah. Because things have really changed this time. It'll be different this time. No. It's like this 4-year hypnotic cycle Americans seem to be under. Well, and it's the same shit every time. After the 4 years or 8 years, however many years, people get dissatisfied. Oh, we got to vote this person out. It'll be different this time. Well, guess what? It's never different. It never changes because you don't change your consciousness. What these leaders are a reflection of the collective mind. And that's all you're going to get is the same shit.
What is the Tavistock Institute and their siblings up to these days?
Well, I think the big push is AI. That is the big push, and conditioning the mass consciousness to accept it. Now, one of Tavistock's greatest weapons has been television. They discovered the potential for TV to manipulate the mass consciousness in 1946, when it was just like basically, being invented and perfected. Someone I might suggest your viewers might want to look into was a guy called Hendrikus Loos, Loos. This guy, and he's really hard to find, he's very obscure, developed a patent for a bunch of technology that is designed to manipulate the nervous system through flicker rates, through pulsing magnetic frequencies, through computer monitors and televisions. There's a patent in the US Patent Office going back to like 1946, where they stated they knew that television could absolutely be used to kind of affect the viewer, affect their nervous system. And these things are patented. They're on, in matter of public record if you can find them. And I think that Tavistock's goal is to get people to accept this world of AI that's coming. And if we look back at the motion picture industry and television, for decades, we've kind of been conditioned for this. If we look at the original Star Trek series, remember that growing up? And we look at all the movies over the last several decades, we've got AI, we've got iRobot, we've got Star Wars, we've got, all these motion pictures that have basically told you all along what was coming. Well, now it's here. And I don't know if we talked about this last time, but two things happened last year, very unprecedented things. In Saudi Arabia, a robot was granted citizenship, and they called it Sophia, which has very occult connotations. But then the United States government, right around Christmas time, revealed, oh, by the way, UFOs are real. We know about it. We have a secret agency that's been tracking them. Now, that's two big things. Okay, a robot's granted citizenship in one of the most brutal countries in the world that treats their own women like shit. That's interesting. And then at the same time, a month or two later, the US government says, oh, by the way, UFOs are real. Now, people like us that do the study we do, we don't trust the media or the government, but most people do. So you would think that would be the biggest news. Holy shit, the US government admitted UFOs are real. Disclosure. Nope. Nobody's aware of it. Then when I tell them, they look at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, no, I'm not making this up. Look, they disclosed it through the New York Times and other media outlets. In Britain, it was the, what newspaper was it in Britain that talked about it? The Daily Mail, maybe it was.
Daily Mail.
Yeah. But that's a mainstream publication, right? And they announced it. So mainstream, saying this, the government admits it, and they've been trickling it out ever since. Kind of slow disclosure. What the agenda is, your guess is as good as mine. I think it's bullshit, but still, you would think that the average person would be like, holy shit, UFOs are real. Nope, not even aware of it. So it's pretty amazing. It's like all these motion pictures have been conditioning us to the acceptance of UFOs and the acceptance of this advanced artificial intelligence technology. And that's where I believe it's going. That's what Tavistock's jewel in the crown is. When they could capture your essence into the digitized mainframe and your consciousness belongs to them fully, physically, yeah, that's the end game. And if we willingly walk into that, like so many will, because 5G is great, isn't it? Oh, I get faster download speeds. People are already, oh yeah, it's great. So how many of them will willingly accept this AI world like just the next phase in human evolution, like it's no big deal? And they will.
And turn into Borgs.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to be part of a collective hive? Then that is, to me, the death. That is the death of humanity. Because once, not that many people are individuals anyway, they're already there psychologically. But once it becomes a physical, plugged into that kind of, digitized world, that's it. That's extinction. Because we don't have to think of extinction as physical extinction. If it becomes this AI world that they're trying to put in place and you are plugged in physically to that, you're extinct, in my opinion. Where's the humanity left? Where is that individual spark of consciousness at that point?
what you just described, the TV manipulating
Yeah.
our thought patterns and thoughts in general. Do you think that that has to do with what we call psychological entrainment?
Absolutely, it does. Yeah. And a lot of news presenters, they're trained in what's called NLP, neuro linguistic programming. And if you pay attention to a news broadcast, they use very short sentences, very certain words that can be considered hypnotic, the way they move their hands and the way that they use their body language. At the same time, television, and especially these modern TVs, the smart TV, you take about 2 minutes to put the mind into a hyper right-brained level of consciousness, basically a hypnotic state. So think about people, they'll go to work all day, they come home, they're tired already, sit down, plop down in front of the TV, so they're already tired, and then we have all these frequencies and flicker rates and certain arrangement of colors and whatnot that will entrain the mind into that basically hypnotic state in about 2 minutes, and therefore suggestible. And you know, it's amazing to me how many people will still take the mainstream media seriously without challenge. It's like they've become so accustomed to being told what to think that that's just it. It's like they operate automatically.
Yeah, they had all these daddy figures, you know.
Yeah.
The guy that comes into your house every night and reads you the news, and he's there for decades. You almost feel he's a family member.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a shame too. And these people, the media, they are the corporate whores for this entire agenda. And another part of the game here too, because in this country, at least it's an illusion, at least that, maybe it's true, but the media hates Trump, right? So again, creating all this division.
And it is hard to tell what they are doing with subliminal messaging.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's been perfected back in the 50s as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, there could be frequencies embedded within the frequencies that are being emitted from these devices. And now they have the VR headsets that they're marketing to kids where you put the helmet on and who knows what kind of frequencies are being bombarded into the brain. And they've got these video games that are so realistic that kids play where they're in combat situations. And the Army, the U.S. Army develops a lot of games like this, and they're involved in it. So like you know, training kids to be soldiers and to become desensitized to war. How about when you have the helmet on your head, beaming frequencies directly into your brain? You know, the implications are pretty enormous there. You'll never see me with one of those things on my head, I'll tell you that. No way. I saw them in the store, you know, they're already marketing them. I was looking at some things and the salesman comes over to me. I'm looking at this headset thing and I picked it up for a minute and looked in. I couldn't believe how realistic it looked. He said, "Oh, we have drones over there with cameras and you fly the drone and you wear the headset and you can see everything in real time, 3D. And I'm like, no, thanks, I'm not interested. It was just kind of amazing that, you know, and it was relatively inexpensive for this equipment. I see drones flying all the time, just people that own them and they just fly them around. And so it's like everywhere we look, everywhere we go, we're on camera. Now even, it's perfectly legal to go buy a drone and put a camera on it and fly it around to desensitize us to constantly being surveilled. And that's Tavistock's big, you know, success there too. They want to control the population. Cradle to grave, everything you do, everywhere you go will be completely monitored and regimented. No more privacy. And people willingly give up their privacy. Look at Facebook. What? I call Facebook the ghetto of the internet. That's what
Yes,
it is.
it is.
People have no problem just giving up their personal information. So it makes their work easier. this, this consortium.
Mhm.
Incredible. Privacy used to be valued.
I've been thinking lately that with these subliminals, maybe that is how they created this Mandela effect, where they broadcasted a second set of data into the masses and then just observed who is picking it up and is it working.
Yeah, that's very possible.
Maybe.
Very possible. Yeah, or they've developed a technology that really can mess with people's memory, which is frightening. I'm not sure. I mean, I looked into it a little. I think it's interesting, but I didn't study it enough to really say either way what they're doing. I did speak to someone in England who had a friend who apparently worked for CERN for 4 years as a scientist. And I asked her, I said, hey, did he ever say what they're doing? And she says, oh, yeah. He said, matter of factly, they're trying to rip a hole in space-time. I said, well, that's lovely. Awesome. Great.
What a wonderful idea.
But she said he was very matter of fact about it, and he quit. He wound up being a scientist for CERN for 4 years. He just quit. I guess he didn't like what they were doing, but I found that interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows what they're doing over there, messing around with things that shouldn't be messed around with.
Yeah.
But I think it all ties in. I think that what they're doing over there ties in with Tavistock's agenda, ties in with the New Age, ties in with everything we've been talking about. It all seems to be connected.
Yeah. And who knows? Maybe next thing we know, one of the great masters, the ascended masters, is giving a lecture. That is the way to go.
Well, who
Work
is the
with the machine.
Yeah. Oh, it's going to happen. Who's the guy that channels for the UN? I forgot his name. There's this guy who's a channeler, and he sits before the UN giving these messages from these masters. Yeah. So of course it's going to happen. I forgot his name off the top of my head. I'll probably think of it. Cryon. That's
Oh,
it.
yeah. Mm.
Yeah, so this guy sits in front of the UN channeling whoever, the nine, whatever the hell he channels. Yeah, okay. So we're going to be led like that. Okay. I would say to people, detach from that shit and, integrate yourself, look at the dark and the light. Don't seek to just get blissed out all the time and escape yourself and examine your dark side. Be gentle with yourself, though. You don't want to hate yourself. Oh my God, look what I did. Oh, this happened to me. We've all suffered trauma, some more than others, but we all haven't. And to look at that can be very liberating.
Mm-hmm.
That would be my suggestion. And all this distraction and bread and circuses, kind of try to maybe detach yourself from a little bit. Take up a hobby that, in which you could be a bit creative and bring a little beauty into this world. That would be my suggestion.
Tell us a little bit about your book.
Okay. That is basically...
And I think people should read it.
Thank you. Basically, Simulacrum was a bunch of work I had coalesced over the years. I started writing in about 2007.
Mm-hmm.
And I had all this stuff that I had written, and I never did anything with it. I wrote a few articles here and there, but never anything. And basically, I just decided this year to kind of update it and coalesce it into one work to make all the stuff I had been doing kind of available to anyone that might want it. And so that's basically the result of many years worth of study into a multitude of different topics, but I kind of see them as all connected in a way. So I had done study into the education system or into psychotropic drugs or the history of psychiatry or anything else, and kind of tried to tie them together and to make one kind of easily digestible work. And that's the result.
Yeah, and everybody can understand it.
I
It
try
doesn't
to,
matter where you are. If you're a beginner or you have been dealing with these subjects for quite a while, doesn't matter.
I appreciate that. I've heard that too, which I really try to do that. I want it to be easily comprehensible and, you know, again, make it in a way that's digestible for the reader who might be new to this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I definitely don't want to leave the reader without hope. And that's probably not the right word, because ultimately I do believe it is up to us where we're going.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to start with each individual's willingness to deal with their dark side and, you know, expand their consciousness, if you will.
And to stop giving our energy and our power away, because there's a lot of energy harvesting going on.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I think giving it away voluntarily, send your prayers, do this, do that, look here, keep us in your your thoughts, blah 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 blah. Buy into this bullshit, buy into that bullshit. We become the free energy for them.
Absolutely. I think that the energy of suffering is somehow feeding this system. Mm-hmm. How it's done, I don't know, but absolutely, it almost seems as if there's some force that generates the energy of suffering and misery, and that's the fuel for the machine. And it's about time humanity puts a stop to it, or the world that we will inherit, or that our children will inherit, it'll be a dystopia. It's like this dystopia unfolding all around us. But I still feel that it's our choice whether we're going to play that game or not.
Yeah. And we better choose wisely.
Yeah, we better choose wisely and soon too. I don't think it could be put off for another generation. Mm-hmm. You know, we leave them to mop up the mess. Look at these kids, and I'm not picking on the millennials because they're born into it. And, you know, I've certainly met many that are a credit to their generation. They're very intelligent. But look at the majority of the millennials. They are plugged into this matrix from the time they're born. We have parents that give their little babies tablets to play with to keep them busy. Video games, like they're brought up with it. And so how will that generation accept the AI? They'll just march right into it because it's all they know. You know, people of our generation, we saw the transition. Back when I was a kid, we built tree forts and we played football and we were outdoors kids. And then it transitioned into this technological age. Well, these kids now are born into it. So they don't have that point of reference. So they're going to be sold this AI world and the singularity, and they will just march right into it. And it's a scary thought.
I think so too, that AI transhumanism, that is the big one. That is the big goal. And everything that supports that is okay.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be checked or rethink this or whatever. You're supporting this agenda. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
And the only thing left then will be to decide who's going to run the show. The AI show.
Yeah. And like I said earlier, we've been conditioned for this for decades through the motion picture industry. Mm-hmm. And here it is unfolding. There's some technology that exists that people have no idea how advanced it is. That's even, you know, entering into the public sector. And like I said, what do they have behind closed doors? We've got the U.S. government that says, oh, UFOs are real. How do we know that's not their craft? How do we know they're not planning some kind of mass invasion? Or maybe some kind of mass savior. Everybody seems to be, savior programming. Oh, well, they're benevolent. They're here to help us clean up Fukushima and to help us, put an end to war. But you just have to follow us, into the AI world or whatever it's going to be. It could go either way.
Mm. Yeah, everybody who says follow us, I mean, come on.
Mm-hmm. Right?
We have the only truth.
Yep, those are the people you run away from. And, to me, it's an advanced consciousness that follows no one and seeks no followers. Yeah. Somewhere, but there's a lot of people, and there's with the new age too, we were talking about, there's a lot of people that they want sycophants, they want followers, and they'll offer up all this shit and be happy to take your money, and they'll lead you down empty corridors. Lots of charlatans out there.
My question came back. The one that I lost. We seem to have a, let's say, a renaissance of pagan belief systems, traditions, the re-emergence of gods and goddesses, and you know what I mean? What
yeah, like a recycling of the same thing over and over again. Well, isn't it time that humanity tried something new and completely different? I mean, an entirely new paradigm for human experience. It would have to be something, see, it's unknown territory. It's uncharted waters. That's where we need to go. Because the recycling of the same old shit is going to just bring us the same old shit. It's going to be, the same thing over and over. And to me, humanity needs to kind of go into a direction that we've never gone. And to me, it would be something based on respect of the individual, common sense, and community. So can that work? Can we be in a community situation where I respect your right as an individual and you respect mine, and yet we still work together in cooperation instead of competition? I don't know. We've never tried it before, but I think maybe it's a step in the right direction.
Okay, you have the idea that gods and goddesses are archetypes.
Yeah.
But, well, let's put it that way. Can't relate. I can't relate.
No, me neither. No, and as a child, I was brought up Catholic, and I never identified with it because they teach you you're broken. The act of being born is a sin. So from the moment you come into this world, you're a broken, dirty, filthy sinner. And I just never, even as a kid, couldn't, and I got hassled for it because, no, you just do what you're told, that kind of shit. And then as I got older and started to realize that the Christian religion is based on the pagan religions that came before it, then I said, okay, I want to study this institution that was forced on me, discovered the history of the church, and I was appalled. And then, of course, the child abuse scandal that's been unfolded for almost 30 years. It's like, wait a second. I'm expected to find God here. And this is why you don't externalize. You could be being led by a demon into your own demise, And this whole pedophile scandal in the church won't go away. It just keeps on coming, keeps on coming. And yet still 1 billion people will get on their knees and put the money in the baskets. And that I don't understand, because that's called willful denial, because this shit is so exposed. You would have to be absolutely blind or in denial to not see it. And yet still people will give their minds to that. And that's how deep the programming can go. And that's what I think human beings need to get rid of, is this deep ingrained programming to externalize for everything. Some kind of authority. We have to get rid of that. Become our own authority. The word authority comes from the Latin word auctor, which means author. Okay, well, if you're not your own author, someone else is going to write the script. And you might not like how the story ends.
Yeah. Write your own movie.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah. somebody is getting ready to hunt down the ladybugs. Mm. Doug, let people know where they can find your work.
Okay, I could send you the link to. It's on Amazon. If you just search Doug Michael Simulacrum, it'll come right up. And I do have another one I'm almost finished with. I wanted to have it out by the end of the year, but there's usually trouble with formatting. And when you do your own editing, it's so much work. So it might not be, but early next year at the latest. So I have another one I'm working on there. And then I'm also
What is
putting
that
together,
about?
well, this one, it's interesting. It's a very short read, probably no more than 110 pages, but it's a very macabre look at the world. From the
Why
point
am I not surprised?
it's actually, I wrote it. I'm actually proud of this one. It was a lot of fun writing it. It's from the point of view of the controllers, whoever the controllers are. It's from that point of view, the controlling consciousness, and it's basically looking at the world as a circus bazaar, as this just macabre jamboree of madness, basically. So that one's coming out again soon, and then I probably have a couple more next year that I'm going to throw together as well. So yeah, Simulacrum is on Amazon. I don't like using a big company like Amazon, but for someone who self-publishes, it's really difficult to do. Really, very few publishing houses would even touch my work. I looked into that, and they said, no way. They don't want to get involved with that. But so for people who are stuck self-publishing, really, KDP used to be CreateSpace, but now they merged fully with Amazon. So you really have very little choice because they'll handle the printing and the distribution, and that's a big expense. So yeah, they can find it on Amazon. And there's a link on my website, DougMichaelTruth.com, that'll bring you right to it as well.
Say that again, Doug Michael what?
It's DougMichaelTruth.com.
Okay.
There's some stuff there, a few short podcasts and some articles that I've put together over the years. And I try to add content to it as often as I can, but I don't do this full time. I'm involved with other things in my life, but it'll be updated periodically. You know, I'm not walking away or anything. I'll keep doing it.
We hope
as
so.
long as there's an interest, you know.
Yeah, let's hope that you are not walking away anytime soon.
No, I'm not. But I do things in the community, and I'm involved heavily with music and now photography I've gotten into. So I try to balance out all these things in my life, you know. And I recommend to people that are walking down this road into this kind of research to find something that brings you joy and do it and keep that balance, because I've seen this destroy people. If you're in that darkness too much and you don't balance it out with positivity and beauty, it'll destroy you. We've seen it happen. People lose their shit, you know, because they forget that, you know, and you should enjoy your life. You should engage in creative activities that bring you joy, you know.
Yeah. Wonderful.
There's so much more that could be said. We'll have to do this again. But yeah,
no problem.
To your
I'm not
viewers,
walking away either.
good. Well, good. See, because we need this to come together. And it's been really cool because I'm speaking to people all over the world who are the most wonderful, kind-hearted people. And we exchange ideas and together put out information. And I think that's a great positive thing. Just a quick recap for your viewers. Tavistock Institute, the American Society for Psychical Research, Esalen Institute, the Frankfurt School, and the Stanford Research Institute. Those, and Esalen Institute as well. All those organizations are joined at the hip, and they have given birth to this New Age movement and what's become this AI movement as well. That was the end goal for them, is to this whole world of AI that we see unfolding.
Thank you for that summary.
Thanks for talking to me again.
Yeah, we will do it again, I hope.
Yes, absolutely.
And so this is Night Flight for today, and we will see you next time.
Yes, absolutely. We'll be in touch too.